brilliant to have my friend Geraldine Latty. She's a songwriter, she's a worship leader, an artist, a choir director, an educator,
my goodness.
so many other things. And also, yeah, a great friend and a great person to be in relationship with and in friendship with. And Geraldine, I think one of the things that I've been wrestling with, and I know many others have, is that so much of our modern worship sounds the same, but not only that, it really is only tapping into kind of one area of the emotive bandwidth.
Right.
So you know, it works on a Sunday morning, you know, and if it encourages you, it lifts you up, but as God's people, what do we do when we're in crisis, or we've lost a loved one, or there's been a natural or national disaster or terrorist attack? Can we really bring our real self, our whole self as a community and individual to God? Or do we have to leave the kind of sad bits or the hurts at the door and come in, you know, happy, clappy, smiling? And I know you've had lots of experience leading worship, so I'd love to just see and hear kind of how you respond and how you would lead in a challenging time or a crisis. What does that look like for you?
I think I just got caught up on that comment, it's okay for Sunday morning, and I guess my mind is already kind of clicking, like, is it okay for Sunday morning? Mm-hmm. And I guess what I'm saying there is how are we developing, encouraging our Sunday morning church congregation to be robust enough, human enough, to cry, to weep, to laugh, to experience life walking with Jesus and with each other. And I think part of what singing does and music in worship does is it can wake up to its responsibility, and at least wake up to the joy and the challenge of being able to encourage us to be more fully human on Sunday mornings. So I guess there's a whole thesis around that in terms of, is it okay for Sunday mornings? But I think in responding to the sudden, to the things that we're not expecting, that are the darker places, if you like, in our experiences. I mean, I remember years and years ago there was a horrific scene that happened in Dunblane that will really date me, but it's still such a vivid picture of a gunman going into a classroom in Scotland, and that had happened during the week, and I was leading worship the following Sunday, and just scrolling through, like, what songs can we sing, you know, and yeah, there were songs that were songs of praise and about the faithfulness of God that can anchor us into that reality. But where are the songs that kind of groan and weep and just say, I have no words at this point.
This is wrong.
Absolutely.
God, where are you? Yeah.
And also what that did for me was, you know, we'd already had our rehearsal. We'd already got our song list planned, and so suddenly I'm leading sung worship and I've got a song list already planned. What are we doing here? How do I interject something that is real, something that connects what I've seen on the news this week to what I'm experiencing now in community? So for me, I guess those questions just began to form I guess a grasp of God, or a wrestling with God, in terms of how do I as a creative kind of express that or respond to what I'm seeing. And so, you know, there are other, as we know because of the world we live in, there are of course places of joy and celebration, but
we need some more of that
and
too.
We need some more of that too. But there are places where, you know, the more recent places of Grenfell and places of crisis in Syria, and that you're kind of thinking, Lord, how do we respond to that? And I think, well, if we can educate and encourage and challenge and question and have the conversation about how to respond to that with the music, I think we're going a long way.
I can remember seeing on a blog just recently about, you know, a church that's very production oriented that had a kind of national disaster locally, and their worship leader was really wrestling. Well, we've got to we've got to have the service the way we do it. It's produced. It
Yeah.
needs to. There's no
Okay,
time to pray. There's no time
Right.
to wrestle with this idea. And some of that's I can understand practically in trying to execute worship according to your values and themes and theology of the church. But there's something that's missing, and I think it's you talked about maybe the earth and maybe the sounds of the earth or
Yes.
what's happening in the here and now. So much of our worship is trying to reflect heaven, which is good.
Yeah.
We want, but
Yes.
but it actually reflects more Walt Disney World,
Yes.
where
Yes.
everything's happy and
Yes.
amazing and
Yes.
doesn't reflect the Christian story, which
Yes.
includes Gethsemane, which
Yes.
includes Calvary, which includes
Yes,
a tomb,
sure.
Holy
Right,
Sa-
for sure.
and
for
so
sure.
I think there's one of your songs that's been so meaningful to me that it's one of my favorite ones you've written is Lord, You Hear the Cry. And I think for me you hold that kingdom tension or that Jesus framework, that gospel framework in that where there is the pain, the suffering, but also there's the hope. There's
Yes.
Gethsemane, there's
Yeah.
Calvary. Would you
Yeah.
tell me just a little bit about that song and kind of how
Wow.
it came
Yeah, of course.
into being.
Yeah, well, that was a song that I wrote as part of a church community, and quite frankly, I sat down. I thought I put a week aside to write songs, and I got to Monday, and I had my little 20-second, sound bites of melodies, and Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of coming back, because this is my songwriting week, and I get to Wednesday and there are no songs that are appearing, and Thursday I'm like, oh God, what am I going to write? I've got to tell people next week that I've been in my songwriting week and I've got nothing to show for it. And so I get to Thursday, so I went back to one of my initial sound bites and just started singing. But I was singing that on Thursday, and I say that to say this. Between Monday and Thursday, I had been aware of stuff happening in my own church community. We had been praying as a church community for a dear friend, a dear man of God, prophetic, practical, loving father and husband, praying for his healing, and he had recently died. And so I was kind of trying to work and wrestle with that question, and thinking about his family who asked me to lead and coordinate his Thanksgiving, his funeral, and how do I and we'd been praying for his healing, and so that was in my mind. There were issues of child abuse hitting the national headlines at that point. I had a friend who had been wrestling with depression for about 5 years, and the up, and then she's getting better, and then it's worse than it's ever been. And so there was all of these stories that were just coming to the fore. I just got off the phone from a friend again who was just wrestling with stuff, and so this was Thursday, singing da da da, the cry of the widow weeping, Lord, you hear the cry of the depressed one sinking. I had a friend who was struggling. They'd gotten married and they were kind of all with the hope of, having children, and were discovering that this was not going to happen. And so, Lord, you hear the cry of the childless hoping. And I was just kind of framing all of these things from people that I saw around me and situations that I saw around me. And so that's why by Friday, this journal, if you like, of what I'd been working through appeared in song. And part of that too, I guess, was also wrestling with, but actually there are people in this world who couldn't give a damn, who couldn't care less. It's like the proud ones are still laughing, the rich are still getting rich, and there are people that are carrying. And so I wanted to bring some of that into the song. So you hear the cry of the proud ones laughing, and the ones who is there a God? What about that? What do I care about that? And then I had a conversation with a friend about the hopelessness of addiction, and so that came into the frame as well. And so there was all of that and wrestling with that. So I'd got 3 verses, if you like, of that catalogue of how do we respond. And the cry is, Lord, have mercy. That's our response. There's a reference there to martyrs praying. But I got to verse 3, and then I thought, is that it? You know, because there is the Psalm 88 place of, God, we just leave this at your door and we have nothing else to say on the subject. We can't find an answer. You sort it, God. But I just felt that there was something more. And just going back to what you said earlier about, you know, there are songs about heaven and this is good, but I think heaven demands that we sing about the places where there are tears, so that heaven makes sense of tears being wiped away. I think heaven demands that we sing about the tomb and the cross and the grave, so that when we get to heaven, we know what no more death feels like. And so when that's what I guess began to stir in me in terms of, actually, Lord, we hear the cry of your kingdom coming. And the whole Romans 8 echoes there of resurrection day for creation groaning. And the place of, you know, we cry, Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy. And that can just become such a sycophantic, fatten me up with mercy. You know what I mean? So I'm so full of mercy that I'm rolling around in this mercy bubble. But for me, it was like, actually, no, if I receive mercy, it's so that I can give mercy, maybe even to these broken situations. So that was part of the response of the last verse. And I guess just to in summary, the chorus, break the heavens, Lord, you said the poor are not forgotten. Again, the reference to Psalms there, you know, break the heavens, God, do something about this. That's what you said. We're holding you to your promise to remember the poor. And because you are a God of generous compassion. So that's kind of part of the backdrop to that song.
So powerful. Again, this isn't flattering. It's one of my favorite songs because it's so rooted within the biblical tradition of the Psalms that are, why God, if we don't understand, you're a covenant making God, you're faithful, yet yet the enemy is around us.
That's
yet I feel destroyed. Again, Jesus in the garden and on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? But it also doesn't leave us in that place. And I think, which there's nothing wrong with having a few songs that leave us in a place of sadness, because there's pain.
The Holy Saturday place,
At the same time, this is the God who has come, the God who is redeemed, who is saved. And so I think that tension is so powerful. What would you say then? What would you encourage worship leaders or songwriters or liturgists, those who are leading services, as they come to a point of wanting to gather the community around challenging times or worshiping in crisis? How could they move forward?
I think it's going to sound very cliche, but I think it is just staying connected and being real, being real and true to who you are and true to the sound of God in you. I mean, I didn't go looking for that song. I just was woken up to the fact that it was already around me. And I just wonder if for us as creatives and musicians and other artistic expressions, it's just a simple question to God: what is there around me that you want me to be articulating that isn't yet articulated? Or what is it you want me to be sounding that is already out there, but with Geraldine's speak, it has that perspective? And so I wonder if it's, just calling on God for an opening of an eye. Keep pressing into skills, keep writing, keep doing what you do, leading with that praise, narrow bandwidth, if you will. Keep doing that, but be asking God, open my eyes to, is there anything else I can add into that? Anything else that I can bring from my perspective that is my sound, that is your sound, God, through me and speaking to this community that I'm a part of.
Amazing, thanks. And
Thank
your music, your work's available online, all digital platforms. So check out Geraldine Latty and her amazing husband, Carrie Luce. Loads of great music available. Download it.
Thank you.